And my name is Dawn Scott Norris, and I am a member of the steering committee, Scott recalls, and we wanted to do a community meeting so that we could have question and answers for the community about our wonderful council members. And so, a few things I want you to think about. One, which is important, if you need to use the restroom, you can go right through the door here to your left. And there's a restroom there, there's water as well. Also, we have two people here, which I don't think we're going to need them to work so hard on security, in case there's a problem. But we're not anticipating any. And I want to give you a little introduction to our moderator for this evening. His name is Rick Longinotti, and he is a person who is trained in non-violent communication. And he actually does workshops, and he's going to be facilitating this meeting tonight. So let's give him a big hand. Thank you very much for coming and helping us out.
Hi, everybody. So the way I will try doing this is we'll give each of the council members 5 minutes to make an opening statement. And then I want to invite you to think of your questions and then come up to the microphone here. And maybe we'll start with 4 at a time, and I'll break them down so that, and then they'll respond to those questions. So would you like to start, Drew? Sure. Yeah. So Drew Glover was elected in November 2018 to the City Council, so he has served over a year.
Yeah, just over a year. Good evening, everyone. As Rick said, my name is Councilor Drew Glover. I live here in the city of Santa Cruz, which has been great. I was born and raised here, and I was elected in November of 2018. They finished the vote count in December of 2018, and then since then, I've been fighting basically consistently for the representation and the perspective of underrepresented people. That was one of the main things that I ran on. There are 3 primary areas: representation, sustainability, and affordable housing, which were the things that I talked to people about when I was campaigning, that I said I was going to be working on when I got elected, and which have been the primary focuses, essentially, of policies that I've been working on since I was elected. Some of the things that I did since I've been elected is help to sponsor and draft the resolution for the Green New Deal, which was adopted a couple months ago, which was really exciting. I created a framework for the city to be able to develop new policies around sustainable development, around mitigating climate change, but also around the interest of creating green jobs in Santa Cruz, to figure out how we can shift to supporting our local industries that are working on sustainable solutions to transportation, development, and other kinds of aspects. One of the other things that I brought forward was a multi-point plan on addressing homelessness in Santa Cruz, and that's one thing I'm sure we'll talk a lot about, and what gave me a lot of attention by some of the people that are trying to remove me from office right now. That incorporated not only creating safe parking places for people to be able to sleep without being harassed by police and or face the threat of losing their car due to citations, but also in creating safe sleeping spaces, because right now in Santa Cruz we have an unacceptable amount of people that are sleeping unsheltered, that are sleeping in doorways under bridges, and are really vulnerable to a lot of things that range from exposure and death by the weather, all the way to violence, as a study that was just done by the Coalition on Homelessness nationally, I believe, about being a severe rate at which people that are unhoused experience violence, both from other people within that community, but also from vigilantes and people that have negative stigmas or violent tendencies towards people who live outside. I have started the process of exploring the establishment of a Human Rights Commission here in Santa Cruz, because Santa Cruz does not have one. There are a lot of cities that surround us that do have them, or some rendition of them, like Human Relations Commissions, but not Santa Cruz. And that's troubling for a variety of reasons. One, because we don't have a police review board. That was taken away in place of an auditor. But also because if we look at the statistics of hate crimes in Santa Cruz, African Americans make up 2% of the population approximately here in the city of Santa Cruz. However, we make up 19% of the hate crimes investigated by the police department. And there's no real recourse or policy wing of the city council or of the government to be looking at those issues and then figuring out how to address them more holistically. But then there's also other violations of human rights that are taking place, not just including issues regarding homelessness, but also with regards to protections of our other vulnerable communities, like the LGBTQ community, as well as the poor, people with disabilities, people of different ages and levels of functionality, I guess, with regards to society. So the attempt to remove me from office is an attempt to remove that representation. There's been a myriad of claims that have been made against myself and my character, which I can tell you has been really painful to hear in a variety of ways. Everything that ranges from being a bully, which we can talk about if you're interested, but it had to do with me writing to constituents and encouraging them to communicate with the mayor about the issue and urgency of homelessness, all the way to claims of gender discrimination, which is very troubling to me because I come from a feminist household with my mom, who graduated from PCC of Feminist Studies with a multicultural emphasis, but also in my work at the Resource Center for Nonviolence in that kind of programming, and in my time that I spent on the Commission for the Prevention of Violence Against Women, which during that time I attempted multiple times to get the body to look at what's called the CDAW, or the Convention for the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. It's something that the UN has adopted, but the United States is one of very few countries that has not signed on to that. So there's actually a movement to get cities to adopt CDAW to provide as many protections for women, girls, and trans folk as possible against the systemic violence as well as the physical violence that they face in our communities. So there's a lot that's going on that involves sustainability. I'm sure that Councilmember Krohn will talk about this as well. But one of the things we've been able to do while having a progressive majority, which is the first time we've had a progressive majority in a considerable amount of time in the city of Santa Cruz, is we were able to secure bus passes for all downtown employees, which we've heard from multiple downtown representatives and employees how beneficial that program has been to getting people to transit around and avoid using single-person vehicles. And also, right now I'm also working on some other things that have to do with protection of indigenous sacred sites and citywide composting, figuring out how we can eliminate methane from coming out of our landfills and doing it in a way that creates knowledge of the food cycles. Other things that we were able to accomplish were, I'm sure Councilmember Krohn will talk about these as well, the corridors plan, which was very problematic in a lot of ways, especially for residents of the east side because of the lack of representation that you had at the decision-making table. And then when we get to the topic of affordable housing, we're figuring out how to deal with that, the dire need for developing affordable housing in our city. The question of how we're going to pay for it, where it's going to go, and how we're going to develop it. And all of those things, I have structured a plan on how we can do that, that incorporates figuring out how to bring in new revenue to the city, to acquire additional properties, which then will allow us to partner with nonprofits like the newly formed Coastal Commons Community Land Trust and develop low and very low income housing that can be adequate for the people that actually live in the city of Santa Cruz, instead of making us a bedroom community for the Silicon Valley or a place for second homes or vacation rentals, leaving even more vacant homes in Santa Cruz while people are living and in many cases dying on the streets. So I look forward to the conversation. I'm not sure how much time I have left. That's good. Yeah, so I look forward to the conversation tonight. I look forward to your questions. And please don't hold back. If there's something that you're curious about or that's really, really want to know, things that you've heard about me or some assumptions that people have made, please ask me tonight so that I can clarify, or at least from my perspective, let you know what's going on in my life. So thank you.
I want to introduce Councilmember Christopher Krohn, who was elected in 2016, and this is the second round for Chris Krohn on the council in the early turn of the millennium, somewhere around there, where you were on the council of Narrated of the city. So Chris Krohn.
Okay, thanks so much.
I'm married. I have 2 daughters. I used to live on Barson Street. My oldest went to golf school here. We have very good memories of this neighborhood. Thank you all for being here tonight. Thank you to Candace Brown and to Dawn Shop Norris and the whole back people of Rents 40 Action Committee for putting this together. Really appreciate that. Can we get a little hand for them? Thank you. I was happy to share the stage with Drew Glover and Rick Longinotti. I was on the council from 98 to 2002. I was mayor in 2002. I'm a little nervous tonight because I think we're in a difficult time, and I want to try to lay it out from what I've seen. I've been here 36 years in Santa Cruz and been active in a lot of things, including my kids' school and soccer lives, as well as political life. I want to try to sketch out some issues. How did we get here? How did we get to this point, this political moment in Santa Cruz? First, I want to say that, ask you a question, because I've been pondering this a lot, and it's a broad question, is Santa Cruz for sale?
No.
That's a serious question that I have. Because from my place on the city council, I'm seeing a lot of evidence that it does seem like there's things getting sold off. There were 2 projects that were proposed, built. Well, one's built and one's going to be built, right up Civic Avenue. The old bookshop Santa Cruz, 79 condos. And then you go down the street in 205 units, a project that's going to be built. It's condos, luxury condos. Not one affordable rental unit will be in almost 300 units in our downtown. And we know our downtown is where the transit center is, and that's where we want people to locate. I'm supportive of that, but I'm not supportive of providing housing for folks living over the hill. So then, that situation exists, and along comes a new council, and they passed the 20% affordable ordinance. So 20% of everything that gets built from now on has to, everything that gets built has to include 20% affordable. If you build 100 units, you have to have 20 affordable rentals, including that, or for sale units as well. We also we kind of squeezed in 10 low-income units over at 190 Westcliff, a project that I thought we could have done a lot better on. It's right across from the Dream Inn. That's going to be 89 condos. But then, before all this, we put a hold on the corridors plan. I think a lot of you know about that. And, it's a political issue, and you pushed us into this, and that's what politics is about. You elect people, and hopefully they do what you elected them to do. And I think that was one big issue in this neighborhood. But I want to tell you, there's powerful interests. It's regional interests and national interests that are looking at Santa Cruz. How many people here know about the Hilltop Apartments over on Western Drive, right off Mission Street? Okay, did you know that sold for in excess of $35 million? $35 million. It was built for like under, 10. Those kinds of interests are none too happy with this current council. The recall, this recall has a lot more to do with developers not being allowed to carve up Santa Cruz as they've been used to, much more than any cough, burp, or smirk that you might have heard about. And don't be fooled. Very little housing being built in Santa Cruz is for Santa Cruzans. Santa Cruz is being sold piece by piece to Silicon Valley investors, to high-tech commuters, and to wealthy weekend warriors who want to come over and do recreation. Well, I'm fine with them coming over to do recreation, but I don't think that we should be building second homes for them. I think if you look at the 300 plus units that are planned for Ocean Street, I don't know how many folks know about this project. It is, if you go to Ocean and Water, all the way to Mary Ann's on your left side, they've put together already 19 parcels. And this is the San Jose group that's doing this, the developer. 19 parcels have been assembled for one big project, and if you have any doubt about what the goal in mind is, the developer gave a presentation, and all of the driveways coming out of this project went right toward Highway 17. The city of Santa Cruz right now, I'm looking at a macro level too. It's being swept up in a very well-funded, multi-city, developer-backed campaign to remove elected leaders. And you can Google this. You don't have to believe me. Especially to remove folks who are standing up for tenants and standing up for neighborhood preservation. It's happening in Colorado, it's happening in Oregon, and it's happening to me and Councilmember Glover right now. Why? Because we generally demand that neighborhoods get to participate in development efforts in their neighborhood. The projects that come down, we want maximum participation. As you can imagine, developers aren't too happy about that. I got on the council because I wanted to fight for low-income housing. I also wanted to defend the preservation of our neighborhoods and our democratic institutions. The city council is the appropriate venue to debate and discuss land use issues. I'll give you a perfect example. The Circle Church neighbors, I don't know if folks have been following that issue, it's been in the newspaper too. They want to preserve that church, but they couldn't get any sort of traction with previous council. They wanted to just take it to the historic preservation and say, this is what we think, this is why we think this church, this land should be preserved. 130 years it's been here. So the current council, 4-3 vote, we said, yeah, let's get it to historic preservation. They're going to be on the Historic Preservation Commission on January 30th to get their day in court. So I'm going to wrap up here. You know, besides the 20% affordable, I think that this council has focused on getting Kaiser into downtown as well. If you don't have to go over to Scotts Valley as much to use Kaiser, they're going to occupy 2 floors on the Cooper House. We think that trees are a good thing. I'm glad our president today also signed on to 1 trillion trees. We're not going to have that many in Santa Cruz, but we think the tree canopy is a real important thing, and it's low-hanging fruit in the whole climate mitigation, pun intended. Another big issue for me is raising the pay of low-wage workers. Councilmember Glover and I led that effort at the city council to get our lowest paid city workers a raise, which they hadn't had much in the last 10 years. Another issue that we addressed were tenant legal rights. We got legal services for tenants. We also have been pushing for an emergency homeless shelter, and we achieved funding for that as well, and we're in negotiations for that right now as we speak. If voters take a stand this March 3rd, the payoff, I'm trying to say this is what's at stake, and I'm just going to read this because I really feel strongly about it. If voters do not take a stand this March 3rd, the payoff for corporate real estate and developer interests will basically greenlight more high-density luxury development in Santa Cruz. Hopes for getting much affordable housing will be dashed. The original corridors plan will be back on the table. One of the candidates running for our seat has already said that. The UCSC will likely not be held accountable. They will not be building more housing for their students on campus. Our main library downtown will be moved into this behemoth 6-story parking garage, only to displace our beloved farmers market on Cedar Street. Developers are working with real estate interests to get the kind of city council they want. They want that city council back. There's a lot to lose in this if this recall is successful. I'll end there, and I just want you to know that my bottom line is that as long as I'm on the city council, Santa Cruz will not be for sale. Thank you very much.
Now I'd like to invite people to come to the microphone. Let's invite 4 people at a time so that we can, I can jot down your questions and then we'll have kind of cohesive. So could we just line up behind this person so we got 4 people and then we'll do those questions first. Great. Hi.
Yeah, it's like I have a loud voice, so I just realized my mic wasn't on.
My name is Rafa Sonnenfeld. I've lived in Santa Cruz for a long time. I grew up here and went to school here. I currently am on the City of Santa Cruz community advisory committee on homelessness. I'm really passionate about making our community a better place and supporting low-income people and homeless people in ways that move us forward and are going to be beneficial for everyone in our community, housed and unhoused. I'm going to say something that I think might not be particularly popular in this room. In fact, I know that it isn't, but things have changed, and that's re-examining the quarters plan. And the reason why I say that is because the quarters plan involves sort of reconciling the inconsistencies between our general plan and our zoning. And the general plan is what called for a lot of the higher density stuff in the quarters that I think a lot of people in this room are hesitant about. And basically, after Senate Bill 330 passed, when now that's in effect, it's law as of January 1st, that sort of eliminates the need to do a quarters plan because now developers have a right to do projects in line with the general plan and ignore the zoning. So if this community is concerned about having a voice and doing projects that we think are appropriate and matter visually and otherwise, I think we want to consider adopting something like the quarters plan, because otherwise we're going to get a lot of this density and not have as much control over how it happens because of the state law. So I'm asking you guys if you would reconsider your position on the quarters plan in light of SB 330. Thank you.
Thank you.
I wrote a letter. Thank you so much. Yes, she said it. I wrote a letter so that I would not forget what I was saying. So, dear City Council members, Mr. Christopher Krohn and Mr. Drew Krohn, my name is Patricia Doler, and I was born and raised in Santa Cruz, and I've owned my home in Prospect Heights for over 30 years. First of all, I want to thank you both for your devoted public service to the City of Santa Cruz. And I would like to acknowledge the daunting job that you have to represent all of your constituents' varying viewpoints on the issues facing our city. Thank you very much. My questions concern the relocation of the city-sponsored Salvation Army managed homeless encampment from 1220 River Street to the Armory site at the La Viega Center. I know this usage is different from the overnight-only warming shelter or temporary winter shelter uses in the past. This is the first time the Armory has been used as a 24/7 homeless shelter. I also know this is supposedly a temporary shelter site for the tent encampment residents of 60 to 80 people at 1220 River Street. And the reason given is there is a water main repairs scheduled to begin mid-March 2020. I would like you to address why the city residents, specifically the neighbors adjacent to the park and the recreational participants who use the park, weren't part of the decision-making process. The first time city residents were made aware of this decision was January 9th, 2020, when the Santa Cruz Sentinel published a front-page article announcing the City of Santa Cruz plans to begin the relocation of the homeless encampment on January 15th, 2020. I'm aware for the past 3 to 6 months, a number of sites have been discussed to deal with our homeless crisis. These include Demio Lane, Emmeline Street, Golf Club Drive, the Veterans of Foreign Wars Post in Live Oak, the Laurel Street Salvation Army Building, and the Armory located at the La Viega Park. I am also aware the city manager of Santa Cruz hired a consultant group to look into this issue somewhere around September 2019. And, as stated by Ron Prince, a special consultant to the city manager's office in an article to the Santa Cruz local news website, December 18, 2019, His quote is, "There's a whole public engagement process that's going along with this. So we're not going to talk about those locations at this point." Councilman Krohn and Councilman Loeb, to my knowledge, a public engagement process of all the stakeholders concerning this decision did not happen. The residents of Prospect Heights, Carbonaro Estates, Ransford Drive, Old Pilkington Road, and the recreational participants, business owners, and schools in the area were not included in the decision to select the specific armory site. The only public engagement I know of was offered to a handful of hand-picked citizens during a meeting with the city manager's office on January 5th, 2020. These individuals did not represent all the diverse views on this issue. In addition, considering the meeting occurred 4 days before the announcement was made in the Santa Cruz Sentinel, it appears they were not part of the decision-making process. Rather, the city manager's office announced the armory site was chosen and the imminent relocation of the homeless tent encampment was to begin in 10 days. This is not participatory politics. The First Amendment guarantees our rights as United States citizens to freely express our opinions on subjects. However, one must be apprised of an issue in order to formulate an opinion and speak on it. Additionally, the First Amendment guarantees the right to petition for redress of grievances and to demand for government action. I therefore am asking for you, my council members, elected to represent all the citizens of the city of Santa Cruz, to look into this very important matter. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your question. And all the work you put
And
in.
I have a letter copy for both of you. I didn't feel that you could answer this in this meeting, and I thought that maybe you would like to do research like I have, and so I have a copy of this letter to both of you, if you would like copies of that.
Yeah, we'll take a stab at it.
And then
Yeah.
somebody in my neighborhood wrote a letter as well, and so I just handed delivered, and they only made one letter, so I'll just hand delivered it. Thank you.
Thank you. I could address partial stuff of what you mentioned when we get to that time.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Mike Irvin. I live in Santa Cruz. We're a good while. I don't want to see it sold either. My question is only for Mr. Glover. There's a gentleman writes regular columns on Sunday in our local paper. And his last addition to that body of work involved a kind of dismissal of charges against Christopher Krohn. Krohn might have made some mistakes, but they're honest mistakes. He should be. On the other hand, this guy Glover is some kind of evil incarnate who has malicious motives and nefarious activities. Read the damn thing.
Yeah, Steve,
No,
Read the column. Yeah. He's reporting the column.
Read. That's exactly what it says.
Will you please not
So,
swear? What's your question?
So Mike,
What am I swearing about?
What are you?
So, Mike-
The word damn is a swear word.
well, let's continue, Mike.
Excuse
Will you
me.
turn around and keep talking?
Excuse me.
I'm sorry. Okay.
So Mike,
Out of line.
just while I got everything, can you get your question out?
Yeah. I would like to know, in your view, what are the three most scurrilous charges leveled against you, and what are your answers to them? I say this for practical purpose. I'd like to explain to people what a bunch of rubbish this is.
I apologize for misunderstanding you.
Thank you.
Except
All right, the meat of this argument is development, and we're at crossroads whether we choose community or commodity. I would rather be a community than a commodity for people that have more money than all of us in this room put together. I did not know what a 460 form was until I got involved with this anti-recall movement. I've been working on the latest filings by Santa Cruz United, who have proposed this recall. They have spent $667,000 paying people to gather signatures for this recall.
How much?
$67,000. And the defeat of our local measure for rent control, something that was brought forward by the people of this city, $200,000 came in to defeat that measure from realtors in Chicago. $220,000 was brought into the city by the California Apartment Association. They collected and spent $553,000 to defeat the will of the people. If we want Santa Cruz to be the kind of community that we want, then we need to stand up for our community and tell those people that want us to be a commodity to fuck off.
So why don't we take the last comment first and be ready to reaction, so it's still fresh in the mind.
I would just say that folks, whatever he was saying, you can find that out. Just go to the city's website and look under 460. These are FPPC, the Fair Political Practices. You can see who's donating, where it's coming from. There's a lot of out-of-town money, yes. But that's all I have to say about that. Thanks.
Yeah, I think it's troubling to say the least. I mean, we talk about Santa Cruz being for sale, and those numbers are staggering with regards to thinking about coordinating locally around political issues. The sheer volume of money that is being used to, in many ways, misinform voters. And that's one of the things that concerns me the most about the recall, is not so much that they're trying to recall me, I mean, that's a problem, of course, but the way in which they're going about trying to recall me. Not only in spending tremendous amounts of money in doing it, but also in using that money to sow lies and misinformation. The mailers that have gone out have been littered with incorrect information and lies. The petition gatherers that they paid $8 to $12 a signature. Just think about that. $8 to $12 per signature, when normally people are paid $2 to $3 per signature, maybe $5 or $6 per signature right before an election. But to get $8 to $12 a signature and then have numerous reports from community members about them being told one thing by one petition gatherer and then one thing by another that completely contradicted each other. Some claiming that we were trying to kick the homeless population out of Santa Cruz, and other ones saying that we were trying to put homeless camps in every neighborhood, all to try to get signatures, should be troubling for a lot of people, because not only are they trying to buy the election, but they're buying the election by using lies and misleading voters. So the other aspect to that large quantity of money is that it created a system that made it so that people that were poor, people that Chris and I represent intentionally, were collecting signatures against their own interests just because they needed to pay their bills. There was a petition gatherer when someone told them about what the recall was about and was able to educate them about the specifics about the claims and the work that Chris and I were doing. The petition gatherer said, well, if you pay me not to collect signatures, then I'll do that. But right now I need this job so I can feed my kids. And so there's a lot in that. We have development and real estate corporations that are making it impossible for low and very low income people to live in Santa Cruz, and then turning around and hiring those people because they can't live to survive here to remove elected officials that were elected to represent them. So there's a lot of problem and it concerns me deeply. So thank you for sharing those numbers.
So we're going to go back to the first question, and I'm going to try to summarize it, and you can check and add something if I missed something, okay? So it was about the corridors plan. The council put the corridors plan on hold and asked the staff to check in with the neighbors about starting over again, basically. SB 330 passed by the state, now in effect, and according to your interpretation, that gives developers rights to projects that are consistent with the general plan and not necessarily having to follow zoning that's out of sync with the general plan. So the question is, should the council pass some, or initiate some kind of process in order to have some kind of design controls, other kinds of controls over development? Is that accurate?
Rafa, I love you. I love the work you're doing in this community, but I think what is at the heart of the corridors plan was that the community was left out, similar to what Patricia said about leaving that part of the community out about a decision that's going to affect their neighborhood about using the armory. And I think that's the basis for this. And if the city council wants to come back with a plan, they've got to make the community the center of that plan. And the only thing I'll say is that there was a committee of 14 people. None of them were from, as I understand it, none of them were from the east side of town. But yet if you look at the maps, most of the development was going to be on the east side. And that might be okay at some level, but I don't think people felt like there was much affordability in the development they were talking about. So if they said, we're going to, put the plan out there and say this is going to be affordable housing, I think people might have come to the table and talked about it. But I think they left them off the table. They should have started downtown. That's the place where we need to put some units in. I think we're ready to go on that. And I'm talking about a lot of units. People are going to be surprised over the next 5, 10 years, 1,000, 1,200 units or more. But I think start there and then move to the east side.
Yeah, you want to brief.
I hear the concern about the east side and how we should do more downtown and all that, but I think what we're forgetting is that that's already been decided in the general plan. So are you suggesting that we would go and revise the general plan and that should be our focus, and sort of if there are projects that come in that meet the terms of the general plan now, that we shouldn't have expedited efforts to try to fix what those problems might be if there are new projects that come down the pipe before the general plan were to be fit or changed?
Correct me if I'm wrong, Councilmember Glover. I think we've tasked the Planning Commission with doing just that, looking at general plan amendments.
The move that we've made to stop the corridors plan where it was designed to provide additional input opportunities for people in the community that were left out. So we've already touched on the importance of bringing in people from the east side, but that was part of the instruction when we made that motion in the first place, was to intentionally engage with different groups that could represent what's going on. Now, I want to see affordable development. I want to see, and again, this might not be popular, but I want to see denser development because we need to have people near corridors to be able to hit the public transportation systems. But we need to do that with the inclusion of the voices of the people in the neighborhoods that are going to be impacted by those decisions. I hope that we can readdress the situation of the corridors in whether it's amending the general plan or figuring out ways to bring the voices of those that were left out of the conversation to the table to look and assess the previously proposed corridors plan and then figure out how to work through those problems. But we did task the planning department to move as quickly as possible in finding solutions to readdress the potential of developing along the corridors and making it in a way that the community can participate in. So I don't think that the corridors plan is totally off the table with regards to having a plan to address the corridors, but I do think that that corridors plan, which was inequitable in its design process, is something that we need to take back to either the drawing table or start from scratch.
Yeah.
I've got something.
Is this on the stop subject? Okay, go ahead.
I have talked to Chris about story pools, and I'd like to speak to the entire group about story pools.
About what? Say it again.
Story poles.
Okay, thanks.
They are a representation of a proposed structure that we don't do in this city, and I'm a builder. I work over the hill, but I can't afford to live here if I don't go over the hill with the other 35,000 people that go over the hill in the morning. If we were to do a story pole of this building, there would be a 2x4 structure that would go up to the roof. It would be at the end of the building. It would be at the end of the building. There would be orange safety netting strewn all around this so that the people in this neighborhood could look up and go, well, of course, we're thankful it's already here. But they could go, oh my God, this looks really huge. If they had done this at 190 West Cliff, the people in that neighborhood would have looked up like that and they would have gone, oh my God, that's too big. Most people have no idea when you look at an architectural plan of what's going to occur. But when you have story poles that are mandated by an ordinance, where they are up and visible during the comment period as to whether this fits into the community or the neighborhood, then the community actually has an opportunity to participate. A lot of this stuff is done and none of us pays enough attention. None of us. But when it's visual in front of you, you participate.
Thank you. So now we're going to go to Patricia's question, which was about the temporary relocation of the homeless shelter from River Street to De La Vega Armory. And she was saying that neighbors were not consulted, and except for a small group a few days before the decision was made. So do you have any comments about that?
Yeah, so as I mentioned in my opening statements without the microphone on, homelessness has been a major topic of focus for me since I was elected. I want to acknowledge what you said about our responsibility to represent all members of the community. And I don't want you to think that in my advocacy for people that are experiencing homelessness that I don't care about you as a homeowner and your existence, as well as the impacts of some of the policies that are being suggested. I was so interested in understanding the policies that I was working on. I took a trip during the summer break to fly up to Portland to look at their implementation of some of the programs that I was suggesting down here in Santa Cruz, specifically transitional encampments, which are not really like the Armory, but kind of like the Armory, smaller and sporadically placed in different locations of the community. But one of the main aspects of that was community engagement. There's a place called the Kenton's Women's Village, which is a space that's created for women that don't feel comfortable going in shelters. Right, so you know the model. Initially, it was resisted heavily by the community before it was able to be put into the space. But after it was established, even leading up to it, but even after it was established, there were consistent meetings with the neighborhood to make sure that there was that open line of communication to be able to share ideas, concerns, and also to share knowledge as to the structure of the program and how it works. One of the biggest problems I've had and that I observe as a city council member is the lack of community engagement that is initiated by the staff. And even in my initial motion for homelessness, where the whole issue of Depot Park came up, and that's actually where I met Rafa for the first time, was in his organizing around the community's concern around Depot Park in Lot 4, right? Lot 24, excuse me. And it was really interesting because when I came forward with the motion for the city staff to identify plots of land to come back with us with a report, in that meeting when there was the suggestions from the staff that were put in front of us, they told us, and this has to do with me being a new council member, they said that we had to choose a site. You have to choose one. And I was like, oh, okay, well, Lot 4 looks good because you have a plan drawn out, you've shown and illustrated how many people can be there, there's a plan that can be communicated to the public. But my assumption in the implementation process was that when we gave the direction to explore and move on Lot 4, that there would be a community engagement process associated with that. And because there was no community engagement process associated with that, and the folks from the Depot Park neighborhood basically just heard that it's going to go into your neighborhood without any input, that immediately caused reaction and a resistance to the plan. They had a meeting to gather support for the resistance. And I went down to the meeting knowing that I would be surrounded by people that thought I was terrible, but it was in order to be able to engage and speak with them so that I could hear their concerns and figure out the best way to move forward. After listening to them, I essentially made the motion or supported the motion to rescind the decision for Lot 4. But if that had been done in a more holistic way, where, and I'm new to government, right? I have not experienced the public reaction to suggestions of homeless encampments before, but the staff has. There are people that have worked there for 20 plus years. The city manager, for example, 20 years, so he knows how people are going to react when these suggestions are coming forward. So when a new council member comes forward and says, hey, here's a plan, here's an idea, here's a location, you would think that the experienced staff would say, you know what, let's schedule a few community conversations so that we can hear from the public. That didn't happen. And it sounds like that's exactly what happened with you, because we gave the staff instruction to figure out how to increase winter shelter. That was our instruction. Figure out a way to increase winter shelter. Now they took that, and to them, that means secure the armory, hand select people from a neighborhood that doesn't represent the full spectrum of the perspectives there, and then launch it without doing anything that is holistically structured to bring people together to have those conversations. And I don't know if they reached out to you with a scheduled plan of meetings in which the surrounding community will have that opportunity to come together. And so this is, to kind of tie it back to the recall, they paint me as the person that doesn't care about homeowners, that I don't care about other people that are homeless, that I don't care about community engagement and process. But to my knowledge, I'm one of the only council members that has coordinated ongoing community meetings to invite people to come and talk to me about the issues that I'm proposing so I can get their feedback. I'm the one that live streams all of my stuff so that people that are curious but weren't able to make the meetings can listen and follow along with me that way. So it's a great example of how they've taken a characterization of me that they know will infuriate people that are potentially in the middle or are not paying super close attention to what's going on, and paint me as the villain that's just trying to inject homeless individuals into everyone's community, as opposed to trying to find responsible and collective ways that we can deal with it, with compassion and with a sense of humanity and dignity for the people that are sleeping outside. So I'm sorry that you have had to deal with this. I'm sure it's been frustrating not only to feel unheard, but then also the reaction or lack of communication, I'm sure, from the city. And I'd love to work on figuring out a way that we can coordinate some more intentional conversations with people with regards to the armory, even though it's going to close in March, which is something that we need to think about. I mean, they're going to close on River Street, and we're going to close the armory, and then what? Then all those people are either going to find another solution and hopefully participate in those conversations, or we're going to displace all those people back out into the streets. And this gets back to the heart of the reason, I did an interview today and someone asked, you testified in federal court, basically against the city. And that's one of the claims on the petition, is that I testified against the city in federal court, which is absolutely true. Because the city was saying that it had ample space for people to be able to receive shelter. That in the closure of the Ross camp, which I was advocating for a retrofitting of, I was not advocating for the maintenance of the same Ross camp with the health and safety violations, the drug issues, the crime, all that kind of stuff. I was advocating for a reformation or a restructuring of the camp to model things like the Kendon's Women's Village or successful transitional encampment models, so that we would be able to provide a space with dignity and not displace people. So when the question of whether or not to close the Ross camp went to federal court, it was my responsibility as someone that has my principles, essentially, to use my voice as an elected official who's involved in issues that can't be dealt with at the Ross camp, and there's no reason for us to be displacing these people when we do not have ample shelter for them. So hopefully that provides you with a little bit of context. And on the petition, it says that I said that there were no health and safety violations at the Ross camp in my deposition. You can get my deposition from the court, and you can see that that is a blatant lie on the petition, because what I said is that there are no imminent or unmanageable risks to health and safety. That acknowledged that they were there, but it did not justify the closure of the camp and displacement of the people. So I hope that provides
I
that.
wanted to tell you how reassured I feel, and that also I am a person who does not make assumptions.
Mhm.
And so to now know how this has been spun about the two of you is, I'm so thrilled that I'm here tonight.
I appreciate it.
To hear both of your voices on this subject.
I would say that I'm appreciative too of Councilmember Glover. It's a good question. But I've been here 20 plus years in public life, and I have to tell you, there is trouble in River City. That things are not all well in Santa Cruz. And this started when the council did prep the community when we started 1220 River Street. We had a police substation there. We talked to the neighbors. I don't know if you know that part of town. Over by Costco, it's farther out. I'm not talking about the homeless services center. I'm talking about 1220 River Street where we had 62, 64 tents to begin with. And then one day the city manager said, I think we're going to close this. And it wasn't a decision of the city council. Now, I don't know how much you know about city politics. We have a council manager form of government. We can hire and fire the city manager and the city attorney. The city manager hires and fires police, fire, parks and rec, down the line, public works. So a lot of time he convenes meetings with public works, police, fire, and himself, and doesn't include a council member. And it's extremely frustrating. We've gone round and round with him. In fact, I've asked, because of what you just brought up, because we weren't informed, I don't know about Councilmember Glover, much before the Sentinel reported it, about that we were going to go to the Armory. And we have this homeless committee, it's called the CASH. Rafa, what does it stand for?
Community Advisory Committee on Homelessness.
And, you know, this didn't even go to the CASH. There are experts. It's, Fred Keeley, who's been in the state legislature, is moderating that group, and this did not go there. This is not good. And so I have asked this evaluation of our city manager to be on our next closed session agenda because things are not going well because of decisions like this. So sometimes it's really hard to figure out what's going on and peel the onion away when you're looking from outside into city government. Most people don't have time anyway. They're dealing with their lives, and we've chosen to be there. But when they won't let us make the decisions, and then we get blamed for it, it's very frustrating.
Thank you so much.
So Mike's question, you've already partially answered, which was, what are the charges against you and how can you educate people about it?
I think you used the word scurrilous charges.
Yeah. And specifically that's the 3, and that's really hard because there are so many claims that they've made against me. And you know, it's really hard, like spiritually and mentally, to be consistently vilified and like turned into this demon, and to have people that have never met me or spoken to me, never discussed any of the issues with me, like Mr. Kessler, write things in a publication that is seen by who knows how many people without giving me the opportunity to respond is troubling and hurtful and all those words. But I mean, there's the, there's the statement that I have sowed a culture of chaos and bullying in the city council. So that was on the petition as well. The bullying claim was made by the mayor in a public forum, having never spoken to me before and never tried to address the conflict in any way, shape, or form, and didn't even own the statement. She said that she needed to address perceptions within the community, which was really strange. However, the fact that she said that, and then she said that she didn't think she'd be treated the same way if she wasn't a woman, initiated an official complaint to the HR because that would say that I was harassing a protected class of people in the community. So that was really troubling, but to provide some context in case y'all haven't read the Rose Report, which is the investigation that cost $18,000 of taxpayer money to look into the laundry list of allegations that were tried to be lodged or levied against me. The claim of bullying came from me writing what is called The Fierce Urgency of Now. It's a piece that I wrote on Facebook And it basically chronicled my experience of walking through the Ross camp and making the observations of the plight of the people and the suffering that was going on there, and then encouraging people. I acknowledged that I felt the mayor was a good person. In the piece, I say, I understand the mayor's a good person, but I don't think there's enough urgency in this issue, because she wasn't going to put the items on the agenda, citing that it would take too much time. Now, there were issues on those other agendas that could totally have been moved to another agenda, and we would have still been able to do city business. But the fact that I had encouraged people and community members to write to her specifically and engage with her and say, like, hey, can you agendize it, it's urgent, that's what she assigned as bullying, which was later found to not be substantiated as a form of bullying, because I was just trying to get people to write to the mayor. And then the gender discrimination was because during the conversation on public comment, so at the beginning of evening city council meetings, people are able to come and speak to items that are not on the agenda. And previously that had been said at 5:30. Now that's a problem for a lot of people, especially students and working class people, because if you don't get off work until 5:30, then you're going to miss your opportunity to speak to the city council. So one of the things that we did as the progressive majority was relocate that time to 7 p.m. to be able to accommodate more people. Now the mayor's argument against it was that she wanted to keep it at 5:30 for people that have families, so that they could come and speak to the city council and get home to make food for their families before getting them to bed. I understand that argument. However, my rebuttal to that was that not everyone is as privileged to be able to get off work by 5 or 5:30, or to have a family to have to go home and feed. Now, that statement she associated with gender discrimination and being sexist. In reality, as according to the investigation, it in fact had to do with socioeconomic differences and levels of privilege in our community. It had nothing to do with whether or not someone was a male or a female. And so that's an example when we see these claims and allegations made against city council members, or the piece that was done by the Good Times, which I think was rather irresponsible, called Bully Pulpit, when it first happened. It has been blown so tremendously out of proportion and skewed in such a tremendous way that if someone who has not been paying attention reads the headlines and then looks at the Santa Cruz United website, they're going to potentially think that I'm a terrible person. And so I appreciate these opportunities to talk to people. And so I guess that's two. And then the other one was the Ross camp and the statements in federal court, which I talked about before, where I did not, and I'll say it again, I did not want to keep the Ross camp the way that it was. There was no time that I ever made a motion that said, hey, let's just keep business as usual. Everything that I did during that entire process and those conversations over those multiple weeks had to do with retrofitting the Ross camp. And it wasn't just my vote that kept the camp open. That's the other thing. It took 4 council members to keep the Ross camp open, and we kept it open until the staff guaranteed us they had enough shelter space, which turned out to not be true. And so, there's so much more that I could go into, and I'm happy to talk about any of the specific allegations or charges against me for anyone that's interested in talking about it. But those are some of the ones that are the most disconcerting. And the fact that the investigation and those claims of sexism have been turned around, and now people are up on campus saying that I'm a sexual, that I sexually harass people. And that is painful in so many ways too. And I mean, all this is going to follow around forever. The internet doesn't forget anything. So anytime someone Googles my name now, all these really biased and misleading article headlines are going to come up when they look at me, and then that's going to hopefully not influence their decision making. But if we win the recall and provide that platform to be able to talk about all of the misconceptions and misinterpretations that have been made over time, then I look forward to that.
Well, there have been a few charges against you. You want to take the same question?
One was about closed session, that I wanted to go into closed session. It was the council vote to go into closed session. And personally, I go, I'm the one who's always on the city attorney saying, no, we don't need more things to go into closed session. Let's do the public's business in public. Let's have sunshine on it. I mean, I'm constantly beating that drum. So that is one sort of allegation. Another one was about leaving a meeting, and the meeting I left was the mayor locked the doors, and the public couldn't get into the council chambers. That's not a public meeting. It wasn't a closed session meeting. It was a public meeting, but the doors were locked because a few people were being outrageous, and I agreed that they should be leaving the chambers, but you don't lock the door and continue with city business for people who want to speak. I don't know if there's a third allegation, but that's, I share Councilman. Yeah, the sarcastic laugh, right. And it was over at the bus passes, the downtown bus passes. We were having a discussion about it. City staff member, who I actually rely on for expertise, and I like her work, I like her attitude. She wants to get people out of their cars, and I appreciate that. We disagreed on some of the finer points of this. For how many bus passes should we supply? 4,000 for all downtown potential downtown employees, or I think she wanted to do like 300 or 400. 144 was falling very closer. And I didn't, but I didn't, and if you look at the tape again, just like if you look at the transcript about Councilwoman Glover, I didn't smirk, I didn't laugh, but it was, she said I did, and it was corroborated by a fellow council member, and so that's why it appeared in the report. About the only allegation that was substantiated. Everything else against either Drew or I was not substantiated. There was one incident about a room that was, you can talk about that one, but that was it. And it's been blown out of proportion, and we're never going to be able to talk to all the people we need to talk to about these issues. So following up on what Drew said, I hope that you all will go out and tell people what you've heard tonight, and that'll double and triple what the information flow.
So can we have 3 more or 4 more people come to the mic here? Go ahead.
Real quick, I just wanted to let people in this room know a week from today, 6 p.m. at the Veterans Memorial Building downtown, the Community Advisory Committee on Homelessness is having a public forum where we'll be discussing the revisions to the camping ordinance. This is part of the work that the council asked to look at and make recommendations on by the end of February. And this is essentially the one opportunity, other than coming to a regular meeting on opposite Tuesdays from the council, to really have your voice heard on where we should be going with a camping ordinance in Santa Cruz.
What's the time of day again?
It's 6 to 8 p.m. on Wednesday, the 29th.
I'm Dave, I've been resident in this county for 25 years. Pretty recent on the scene of personally observing and witnessing city council affairs, but something moved me to start going, and it's pretty good. So, nonviolent communication is a style of language and observation where you look at the issues and you focus on those issues, and you can get some really quick results quickly. Now, the charges against you two human beings are kind of heavy, and they can really exaggerate. I have witnessed both of you actually making changes for the city of Santa Cruz and the greater community. It's such a, you guys outweigh what you're doing more than the other 5 combined. See that this recall and how typical it is in our larger society. It's bringing up a lot of other issues. So I'm not quite sure what to say. I'd like to see you guys doing what you're doing.
Hi, my name is Pete Shea. Everyone thinks I'm English, but in point of fact, I've been in Santa Cruz for 70s. So, I'd like to know from each of you what you propose to do after we defeat the recall to make things better. It seems clear to me that there are some rigid I disagree with them all along. I think there's some very unfair stuff going on there. But we need somehow to set that aside and move forward. And I'd really like to hear from each of you how you think we can do that.
Thank you.
Well, I know I've been up here more than my fair share. That won't stop me. I want to say that all of the issues that both of these gentlemen have been addressing have been distraction. I want everybody to go away from this meeting realizing that this is about development and Santa Cruz for sale. And I want to acknowledge Drew Glover. I don't know where you get it, how you handle the crap that is thrown at you from every single direction, and you stand proud. And I want to congratulate you, sir. I want to congratulate you. Thank you.
So, as a woman who's been in this community for 45 years and has experienced a great deal of harassment and discrimination both at the university and in my career, for all the women in this community, it really touches a special chord and a very painful chord to see women staff members come to city council and say what they did, and then to have CPBAW actually call out for a second censor and actually post a press release, which is still now on Santa Cruz United. And I know that soon after that, and after a press tour, so to speak, on the radio and also in the Sentinel and ads or quotes that are now being used by Santa Cruz United, the chairman of CPBAW suddenly quit. But the damage is done. And so I think that is something that really needs to be thought about. I personally think there should be an investigation, and there's people in the community that are pursuing that at many different levels. But the damage has been done, and so there's really a need to somehow bring the community together. And as I go around speaking to a lot of people, trying to get people here and just speaking to people in general, people feel like there's so much discord and they just want it to be ended. And they just think if they pluck out two people somehow it magically will end. Because we know that's not true, but I just think it won't be solved today, but I think that there needs to be a lot of community engagement. I think we should have sing-along, camp outs, whatever we need to do to bring people back together, because there's a lot of wounded hearts right now, and we need to rise to a much greater level of love. And certainly, I know you guys are doing that, but people aren't feeling it, and so that's where I really struggle with, what to do, what's really going on. There's a lot of strife, a feeling of strife right now in the community.
So, do you want to add something?
I'll just offer a solution. I'm not going to ask a question.
Okay.
My name is Michael Young. I've been here. My grandfather came in during the century. He was such a homeless and all that. I offer solutions. Okay, we all did. We complain. I hope that we can come to the table, offer a solution. For 10 years, I fought for homelessness. I was homeless for 22 months of my life. It was a terrible thing. I was arrested, spit on. I still get arrested. My solution is we need to open dialogue, open hearts, right? Understand each other. We witnessed the negative energy. Someone said something, we attacked somebody. My solution is let's open our hearts. The last 3 years I fought for the homeless. Our VFW down around the corner was open for 3 years for the homeless. And hope you guys understand. If you guys want to talk one-on-one for my suggestion, I'll be glad to. But I want to thank for the positive energy here tonight. Okay, use it in a positive manner. Together we'll solve this problem, Drew. Thank you.
So three speakers have talked in a similar theme here. And the theme is about, Pete brought up, like after the recall, how to build bridges, Candace was talking about the feeling of strife and the need to overcome that. And Mike is echoing that with his suggestions. So, your comments.
I'll take a step first. Thank you. Thank you all for those questions. Try to respond to Pete. I think things already are changing right now. You know, I could count on one hand how many meetings I had with the last mayor, and it was usually because she was too busy. Justin Cummings has already changed the tone completely. I don't know if you saw our first meeting. He actually called us together. The three of us talked. We had individual meetings with him. This is before, during the holidays. He was getting set to set an agenda and to set a tone, and he was very worried and also concerned and wanted to make a really good impression. And I think that first meeting did it. He reached out to us, and he reached out to all council members as far as I know. It wasn't just me and Drew or Sandy, if that's what the current majority is. I'm sure he reached out to Don Myers and Cynthia Matthews and Martine Watkins. The second thing is, I've been in 3 conflict resolution sessions now. One with the city manager, who still, in my opinion, does not take responsibility, but that's in general. I was with Justin Cummings. We talked about a lot of things, and it was really good. And with Martine Watkins. And I proposed to her that after this recall's over, that why not her, me, and Drew go have a civic auditorium town hall meeting and talk about healing. And talk about, let's all come together, just what you said, build some bridges. And put this model out for the community that says, you know, we're resolving and leaving behind some of this stuff, and we're moving forward. As far as vision for the future, I know Drew has been talking about a Human Rights Commission, and I've been talking about a Environment and Biodiversity Commission. Actually, a Climate and Biodiversity Commission. And I think that would also address, have a group of expert folks from the community be addressing climate change and how it's going to affect Santa Cruz. And I'm really interested in pursuing as well the Human Rights Commission idea that Drew has. But that's all that I get. And I appreciate folks, Lee's comment. And Candace, the CPVAW, she didn't say it's the Commission for the Prevention of Violence Against Women. It's a mouthful, but it's a commission that started many years ago. And I think some of us we knew the people who started. Marty Warnhout, if you remember, supervisor, Ann Simonton, Jillian Greenside, people who are really female pillars in this community and have been there for a long time. And they saw it misused as a way of wanting to censure Councilmember Glover and myself. And I believe the outgoing chair came in and did that, and then he left immediately. Didn't even fit in. I don't know how long he served for. But my hope is that we can heal and build some bridges. Thank you.
How much we do it, and you are just a great person to help us get past it. And that healing that you're talking about is for us too. And I want to say that I saw something that you had done online about your sleeping out when you spend a night sleeping outside. And I wish that there was more publicity of that, because it really says a lot about where you are coming from. And I want to say that we need to be realistic, all of us, and what they're doing while we're here is to spread the word, and we need to be sending letters to the editor and volunteering to do phone calling to get out the vote, because getting out the vote is the real important thing. And I want to say the city manager and staff, it has been the result of a conservative city council dominated by commercial interests for years. And it's just been painful to watch how the city staff have been directing where we're going as a city council, and it's time for us to all be working out in these neighborhood kind of groups to change that. And I want to say also that the Santa Cruz Sentinel is conservatively run. That's why those columns that keep coming out. I read the one that we talked about. That's just amazing. And that's racism, but it is definitely conservative-oriented Santa Cruz Sentinel, which people read that stuff and then they look at the letters to the editor, and it's really refreshing to see the letters to the editor. There's some on both sides, but there are some on our side as well. And the other group I want to warn us about is the Santa Cruz Neighbors. The Santa Cruz Neighbors, which has a lot to do with the next door neighbor online group, which is organized around individual city areas. And they are now really supporting the ultra-right wing Santa Cruz United. And we need to, I think to the extent that people have the energy to do this, go get on there and encourage people to support the no recall and think about getting out the vote.
Thank you.
Tag onto what was being said about the Dream In Project and Justin's vote and where that stands. I want to know, is there anything that is being done to address that, to stop it, to change the decision on that? From what my understanding was that the environmental impact report was a current, recent one, was an old one that they were basing it on. I'm not sure if I'm correct about that, but I want to know from you guys if there's some process, something in process to stop that project, or what can be done.
Okay, so let's start with 190 West Cliff, since Sheila brought it up again. Has there anything that can be done at this point? And the earlier question was, how do you advocate with your colleagues, in particular Justin Cummings? How do you advocate on issues like that?
190 West Cliff is something that is disturbing because it is built for people who do not live here. It is a luxury hotel, an extension of the Dream Inn, but it's not going to be a hotel, it's condos. Where that's at right now is going to go to the Coastal Commission. So to answer Sheila's question, there was another bite at the apple. It's probably a long shot, but the Coastal Commission will decide whether that's, serving visitors, and there's height limits that are being contested and some other things. The mind of Justin Cummings, he's not here right now. I will say that I was partially responsible for getting him to run. He's lived in Santa Cruz 11 years. He's got a PhD in evolutionary biology. He's from Chicago. Right now he's at the National Conference of Mayors in Washington, D.C., so he's thinking big. I have noticed a change in him, a tonal change. I think if you saw him on the front page of the Sentinel carrying he was picketing in front of the university, and lo and behold, the K7 union is an offshoot of AFSCME, and they resolved their differences. I don't know if he had anything to do with that, but those are the kind of things that we need to embrace. I think that's where the mayor should be. I think that's where council should be, right there with labor, and talking about wages and cost of living and housing. And Justin was there on that issue, and I applaud him for it. And we, the community, need to remind him of that and embrace, and hopefully, embrace him for doing those things, because that's, I think, how we're going to move him. He doesn't have a Santa Cruz-centered politics because he doesn't have all the baggage that I have. Drew grew up here. Which is refreshing at some level, but it's also missing some really key historical moments that have happened in this community. And I'm talking about from Lighthouse Field to Wild Ranch to the saving the Del Mar Theater downtown. There's been some really amazing things, the Pogonet, things that have been before the voters who decided that we want this kind of community. And we can, there's teachable moments, as we say in the education business, because I'm an educator. That's all I'm saying.
190 West Cliff. So I was in communication with representatives from the surrounding area of the west side that were unhappy with the 190 West Cliff, and One of the things that I was going after to try to figure out if it was something that we could adjust was the height issue that Chris brought up, but specifically because of some of the awnings and stuff, or the shade things that are on the top levels, and how that violated the height restrictions. But they kind of covered their bases on that one because they put language in the motion, whatever the plans, I should say, that those height issues, those fence things or whatever, could be removed if there was an issue. So that kind of made it so we couldn't bring that back up as a problem, because they put in the language that if it becomes a problem, then they'll just remove those top things and then it won't be an issue. The Coastal Commission is definitely the next step. I mean, the reason why I resisted the development, not only because of the insufficient amount of affordable housing, but because of the impact it was going to have on the low-income neighborhood next to it. The mobile home park, where, you know, their windows are going to be 3 feet away or something from the path that the semi-trucks and the dump trucks that are going to deliver food and pick up trash are going to be passing by their windows at like super early in the morning. Some of those places have foundation that's on cinder blocks. Some of them are elderly people or seniors within the community. Some of them have mobility issues. It'll block the sun from them to be able to garden. And that was a big issue that I had also, like, with regards to the proposal that was made by another council member. Well, maybe they can partner with the people that own the penthouses on top and use their rooftop gardens. And you have to appreciate the vision. I mean, it would be fantastic if that was the case. However, I made a point specifically to that it was, I mean, I don't think I used the word ludicrous, but that was a ludicrous suggestion, because I said that it was really wrong because it was like, let's block the sun of the poor people and then have the poor people ask the rich people to use their gardens. And it was just, so there's a lot that was troubling there for me. So I don't know how else to resist the developments. There's a part of me that's like, well, it's going to happen, so now we got to focus our sights on other things. But we'll see how that goes with the Coastal Commission. And then with regards to our mayor, when we were doing our nomination, and when we voted for it, I made a statement, which you can go back and watch, which kind of expressed my feelings about some of those past decisions. But we're in a new year, and I think he's a good guy. I think his heart's in the right place. We're not always going to agree on all of the same policies, as much as I'd like for us to be arm in arm at every vote and all that kind of stuff. But there will be things we disagree on, and I think we have to respect his decisions as an elected leader. At the same time, you are constituents. And so we can put pressure on him, but you need to put pressure on him. Everyone needs to put pressure on him for whatever issue there is. And I would say the same thing about me. You need to put pressure on me and Chris and the other elected officials, because that's what we were elected to do, is to represent you. And unless we're getting that pressure put on us, not in the form of a recall, but in the form of conversations and intentional meetings and all this other kind of stuff, then we can make it happen. I think one of the problems that we have with our city council is that we don't get paid enough money to be able to do the work. So I have to have a second job where I have to work 23 to 30 hours, but it's a nonprofit, so 23 to 35 hours a week on top of the city council stuff. And there was a motion that Councilmember Krohn made during the budget discussions to allocate $25,000 a year for each council member to be able to have a set aide that would be reviewing emails and phone calls so that we could coordinate and collaborate with community. Now that was rejected wholeheartedly by the rest of the council. And so instead what I did was I created an internship structure where I have interns now that are going through my emails and helping to coordinate those kinds of things. But it really requires a concerted effort by the voters to communicate in any way possible, whether that's sending emails, whether that's going to city council and public comment and say, look, I've sent you an email like 5 times and you haven't responded. I'm going to say it right now in public and then see what happens. And I bet you'll get an email back. So that's how I would suggest putting pressure on any city council member, not just Justin, who I think is doing his best.
So there was a question about the structure of city government, city manager form of government. You just alluded to the fact that the council members don't have staff to help them out. So there's a power balance, time balance, resource balance there. So do you have reflections about how to fix
city go?
That's a really tough one. But I appreciate it. I appreciate the question. It's really tough. I mean, we're dealing with an institution that is ingrained. It's going to be a fight. No matter what it is that we do, it will be a fight to change that structure. It only takes four, I mean, I don't know how many votes it takes to transition to a strong mayorship, as opposed to a strong city council member, or city manager. If it's four,
Probably a charter amendment.
so there we go. So a charter amendment, which that process is voters. Right. There you go. So you can do it. All you have to do is start a citizens initiative and collect the signatures, get it on the ballot, and convince your fellow citizens that it's a good idea. I believe in you. You can do it. We can help. But it's really, it's going to come down to y'all engaging and doing it. Now, it only takes 4 votes to fire the city manager.
Yes.
So that's something. But it's difficult because if you don't have some kind of a plan in place, then there's the argument that the organization is going to crumble because you cut off its head. So how are you going to replace that head with a better head and go from there? So there's a lot of questions that are associated with that, but I would say start a citizens initiative and let's get us to a strong mayorship.
He's not the head, he's the butt.
We had a charter review committee, which I had some hope for. It was began through a conversation with me and David Terrasas, former mayor. When the new council members were elected, there was kind of a subtle choice not to pursue that. I think for fear that it would lead to district elections, and district elections in Santa Cruz has always been, how can we rein in the student vote and put that in a separate district, get it away from everyone else. Of course, the students are only 9,600 on campus. You have another 9,600, almost 10,000 living off campus. I think they've reached their limit right now. It's 19,500. I think they're at that cap right now. It's called the Long Range Development Plan cap. And they affect us all every day, believe it or not. I mean, they have sent too many students here. I've been working there for 15 years, so I think I have a handle on, but I think it's also abuse of what they're doing. Transportation, packing classes. They have this whole formula of bringing in foreign students to pay the real freight, and the percentage of foreign students keeps going up every year. So getting back, and I'm alluding to like government, local government, we've had a very poor relationship with like public works director meeting facilities director up on campus, transportation person meeting transportation person on campus. It doesn't happen as much as you would think. And I guess they don't call it a city on a hill for nothing, because it almost is another place for a lot of people in our local government. And I would like to see that relationship changed. As far as changing local government, what Councilman Glover said is true. It's going to be the voters. We are blessed in some way to have a charter city. A charter city means that we can do a lot of other things that other cities can't do, and the state can't come down on us for it. There's certain taxes we can pass, or certain initiatives we can pass, and we don't have to get involved with the state. On the other hand, it also locks us in. The kind of charter city we have right now makes basically the city manager the CEO, the chief operating officer, and everything. And he doesn't, I would just say he tries to preserve his institution. He doesn't care so much about the council until it's kind of in his area, but he's really into preserving his institution, city manager institution. And so he's got resources that aren't our resources. And he always fights the council getting any more resources because he sees that as more work for him. Because if we have an assistant, for example, then we're writing more resolutions and we're putting more things on the agenda. And I'm thinking that he thinks that's not for him. So I really think there has to be, if we're going to change the government institution, we need the people need to get on a ballot initiative. It's got to be from the people. It's not likely going to happen from the city council itself, because there's enough issues coming at us all the time.
So I'm going to ask them in a second for to just have some closing remarks. But I first want to call your attention to the tables back there. There's one table about a brand new Democratic Central Committee, and I could say working for alternatives to desalination. We had a full-on endorsement of this Democratic Central, the will of the people on that one. And right now, a full-on endorsement of a library within a 6-story parking structure by this Democratic Central Committee. So I encourage you to check out the brand new Democratic Central Committee table. The other table is the Stop the Recall table, and it really needs you to sign up there with your contact information so that you can be kept in touch about the community activities that you can do to support this effort. And there's an event a week from tonight, another town hall like this, but over at Loudon Nelson Center, so to tell people that this is really a rewarding experience. I wish we have been doing this all along. What do you have to do? Did you want to make an announcement?
Yes. So I came here to hear what your strategy is to stay in office. It's great that you're having another meeting next week, but I want to hear that now.
We got 5 minutes.
Okay, so, I'll address that. Okay? Yes.
I want to apologize if I created any bad energy. I misunderstood Mike's word and story Stevens.
Yeah, thanks for saying that.
I apologize.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, Dawn?
I just wanted people to know that this whole experience has been videotaped and it will be on YouTube.
Great. Okay. So closing remarks, who wants to go first?
No, it's just that.
What was the last thing? Oh, strategy just for James. There's been a steering committee for Stop the Recalls, No One Recalls for about 3 months now. They've been meeting regularly every week. They've had big meetings and small meetings. There's about 12 people on the steering committee. We've had some big meetings of about 60, 70, 80 people. So it's continuing. You see the yard signs out there, the No One Recall yard signs. There's literature. The website is up. The Facebook page is up. So there's a strategy of confronting, of beating this thing. Voting starts February 3rd. That means that vote by mail goes out. So voting doesn't actually happen on March 3rd, which is, I think, Super Tuesday this year. But there'll be a lot of voters because of the presidential primaries. A lot of things are going on. A lot of things people are worried about. I hope you'll think about this issue as well. And there's 2 candidates that that I've endorsed anyway, that are running: Tim Fitzmaurice and Catherine Byers. That's if the recall succeeds. We have 2 backup candidates, and the folks, when we talk about affordable housing, we talk about 20%. That means 80% is unaffordable. So to address some of the folks about what are we going to do in the future, I'd like to chip away at that a little more. I'd like to get people out of their cars, and I talk to people who need their cars to pick up their kids after school, or to get around because they have a few more years than a lot of folks. And I say, well, every time we can get somebody out of their cars, that provides more space for you to be in your car. And I think this jump bike program has a lot of benefits, and I think it also needs to have some things worked out because people are leaving jump bikes everywhere on the sidewalks. It's really, I don't know if you want to call it the tragedy of the commons, because I don't really believe in that story. I really think people can work things out. But I think we need to do some improvements in the jump bike program, but I also see it working. I think that all of that leads to the library garage, and I really hope folks take a long look at that. We passed an initiative, we passed a ballot to fund the renovation of our library. Somebody in the Public Works Department picked it up as, here we can supplement or work with and build this garage finally because we're going to put the library in it. And I just think that's so last century technology. And there's somebody, if you want to talk more about what that area might be like a permanent site for the farmer's market, man by the table with the beard over there, John, has the town commons. He envisions the town's commons there. There's 11 heritage trees on that site. Why don't we create a permanent space in the farmer's market, renovate the library, and put this parking structure to bed? That's one of my...
Okay. Well, it's been a good night. I like this. It was a really good experience to get a chance to talk with y'all and address some concerns from some folks that I haven't had a chance to talk to and share my perspective on some of the claims and accusations. And hear some of the concerns and the goals and the dreams and visions, talk about reconciliation and the steps towards that. Strategy, grassroots, that's the number one. And you talk to the other group and they claim to be grassroots while spending $60,000 on stuff, using money coming from outside the area and corporate entities. So you have to be wary, I think, of what people say and compared to what they do. I think that we need everybody to be out talking to people. Everybody. Doesn't matter if you're at a party, at your friend's house, picking someone up from daycare, hey, hear about that recall? And then listen to what they say. Because they're either gonna go, oh yeah, those guys are terrible. Or, oh, man, those guys are wonderful. Or, I have no idea what you're talking about. And so it's important to initiate those conversations because it will allow you to spread the message of the need to maintain representation and equitable voice on the council for people that have been left out of the conversation for a really long time. Their yard signs, grab a yard sign, put it in your front yard, put it in your car. If you don't have a house or a car, get one of the little window signs and put it in your thing just so people can see what's going on because they're going to be doing everything they can to get people to think that they are in the majority. That's what they've done this entire time. This group of 20 people that started the recall process. All it took was 20. And I think that's something that people don't know, is that the recall, all you have to do is fill out a piece of paper and have 20 people that are registered voters sign it, and then you begin the process, which gets all the headlines and does all the stuff, and then you spend $29,000 on paying people signatures to gather those, pay poor people, and then you get the votes that you need because you've been lying to people the entire time, and then it gets on the ballot. And then all you gotta do is spend the rest of your money that you accumulated from all these different sources to send out mailers every week, reiterating these statements of misinformation or fear or of othering, you know, like creating this idea that the elected politicians are only focusing on one group. You know, if we can help the people experiencing homelessness, it will directly impact the quality of life for people that are living in their houses. I think that's important for us to realize. Because you won't be dealing with rates of crime, you won't be dealing with rates of litter or people sleeping in places where they're not supposed to be or getting woken up in the middle of the night by a thump and wondering if someone's in your backyard because you know that there are resources that they're taking care of. It's the same thing with figuring out how to support property owners because they pit people against each other, housed versus unhoused. When in reality, people that own homes, especially new home buyers, are buried in debt because of their mortgages and because of the inequitable financial system that we live under right now. Now watch out, we're going to get into talking about democratic socialism, and I don't know how y'all feel about that, but our economic system is what creates the situations that cause us to fight against each other, and then the result is that we can have well-funded real estate interests pitting homeowners against people experiencing homelessness and vilifying the people that are trying to help the most valuable and vulnerable in the community. And there's something deeply wrong with that equation, and it should disturb all of us, regardless of our political affiliations, because we should, ideally at the core of all of this, care about each other, regardless of our class, and regardless of our income level, and regardless of what we're trying to do, we should be caring about each other. Join me in this fight against the attack on representation, and join me in trying to find progressive solutions to the issues that we have in our community by engaging in dialogue and figuring out ways that we can move forward together. So, thanks for coming.